In this lesson, we are comparing scale patterns to triads and making a connection between the two. So taking a scale pattern and then building triads from that scale pattern to see how they're, intertwined and connected. Follow the lesson for free and just pick up all the tips from the video. But if you're interested, this is number 69-78 from my book, Exploring the Fretboard, 100 Exercises for Intermediate Guitar, and there's a link for that in the description. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a brief discussion on triads and scales, and then we'll play through each of the exercises. But before I explain any theory information about scales or triads, let me just say that your only task, if you're following my book, your only task is to play these exercises while saying the note names out loud. If you do those two things, the task at hand will have been met. So you're just playing through C, D, E, F, G, and you're saying the note names out loud. Same thing with the triads, like C, E, G. If you do that, your task at hand will be completed. If, after finishing the book, you'd like to come back and re-explore these exercises from a theory perspective, that's great. Please do so. And I'm going to explain a little bit of information about that. But especially students just at the more early intermediate level, you're just playing through while saying the note names out loud. So triads are built from the first, third, and fifth scale degrees. So in C major, we have a scale, and if we take the first, the third, and the fifth, we get a triad, a C major triad. So what I mean by that is like 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 5. So the first degree is the first one, the third degree is 1, 2, 3, and the fifth is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In letter names, that's C, E, G. Now, depending on what note you start on, what note is in the base of the chord, that defines its inversion. And again, you don't have to know all this information. This is kind of extra. Your only task is to play it and say the note names, but let me just say it anyway so you get a little bit of context for this as well. So when in a C major triad, when the C is in the bass, the first scale degree, that's called a root position triad. When the E is in the bass, that's a first inversion triad. When the fifth is in the bass, that's a second inversion triad. So in root position, it's 1, 3, 5. In first inversion, it's 3, 5, 1. In second inversion, it would be 5, 1, 3. So, but those three notes in combination create a triad. And they can, any of the notes can be in the bass. They're just called something different, and they have a different musical effect. But like in root position, it's C, E, G. In first inversion, it's E, G, C. And in second inversion, it's G, C, E. And you repeat it upwards. So that's a little bit of context about how scales and chords, triads in this case, 3-note chords, are completely interlinked. And by knowing one, you can kind of know the other. And by saying those note names out loud, you'll be able to make that connection very clear. And you can do this with any scale and any key, right? So now we'll go through the exercises one by one. They're kind of in groups of two, like I'll play the scale pattern and then do the triads for that scale pattern. So we'll do it in kind of groups of two. So the first group is number 69 and number 70. So number 69 plays the C major scale pattern all the way to the highest note in position, then to the lowest note in position. Say the note names aloud at home. During the video, I'm just going to be giving some other tips during this, but make sure you're actually going C, D, E, F, G, and going through it like that. So the first one is in second position. And we do a squeeze shift here with our first finger so we can reach out. Then we squeeze in with the fourth finger. To the lowest note and to the return. Then using those scale fingerings, so really master the scale first. And then for number 70, it's the same scale pattern with triads. C, E, G, E, G, C, G, C, E, C, E, G. So yeah, using the notes from that scale, we get all those triads. And the reason we're playing them broken, that is one note at a time, is just that for some students, holding some of the triads, especially later up here, might be a little challenging, but playing them one at a time just is a little bit easier. But you can try to sustain the notes as best as possible. Okay, so for number 71 and 72, the scale will be in 5th and 4th position, and the triads as well, right? So in number 71, we have our 4th finger on the 6th string here, and there'll be some squeeze shifts again, so we'll just point those out. You squeeze 4th in to reach 1 out, squeeze 1 in to reach this position, squeeze 4 in to reach down, squeeze 1 in to reach down to this position. We've already talked about squeeze shifts a little bit in this book, but that's just a reminder there. Just follow the fingering in the scale or from the video, but it's easier with the position marks in the book. And then building triads from that, in number 72, we're just using that same scale fingering and building triads. C, E, G, E, G, C, G, C, E, C, E, G, E, G, C. Yeah, and each one of those triads, each one of those bars there, represents a triad either in root position, first inversion, or second inversion. Root position with the C in the bass, first inversion starts with the E in the bass, and second inversion with the G in the bass. So you can review that as you go. But again, just say those note names out loud and play through. Number 73 and number 74, this occurs in a pretty familiar scale pattern with the C on the second finger on the 6th string. So we're in 7th position. So let's just play through the scale. Most of you probably know this pattern. To the highest note. To the lowest note. And returning. And then number 74, of course, we build the triads from that same scale pattern. C, E, G, E, G, C, G, C, E, C, E, G, E, G, C. I've known all of these patterns for many, many years. Pretty easy for me to go through. I expect for many students this will take quite some time, especially saying the note names out loud. So it might take some getting used to, and just take as much time as you need. You know, if it takes you months to learn one exercise, fine. If it takes you just 2 days, that's also fine. Whatever it takes is great. You'll be learning lots. Number 75 and number 76, that's using a scale pattern in 9th and 10th position, starting with your second finger on the 4th string. You do a small squeeze shift with 1, squeeze down with 4, squeeze in with 1, because that one started on the 4th string, we're actually going to be starting the triads on the 6th string here. E, G, C, G, C, E, C, E, G, and a position change, G, C, E. Number 77 and number 78. Now, this is a pretty awkward position here. There's going to be a scale up in this position. For some of you, for some students out there, I assume this will be a pretty awkward one. But remember, this isn't a technique book and there's no tempo requirements. So, and if you want to use these exercises for technique, that's great, but you don't have to. You don't have to worry about how legato and pretty it sounds. You can really just play the notes for the exercise, like get that note, get that note, get that note, get that note. Get each one, just one at a time, and be comfortable with it. Play it extremely slowly, and then move on to the next exercise after a few days of getting comfortable with it. So, yeah, different students will approach this differently, and that's totally fine. I acknowledge that it's quite awkward in this position. So this scale pattern starts with the 4th finger on the 5th string, C. And again, even if you're just doing this exercise just to get more familiar with this area of the neck, that's great. Don't worry about it. You can always come back and do these exercises again once you finish the book or in a year from now. Do it all again with a different intention in mind. But for now, for most students, I think just playing through it while saying the note names is plenty. C, D, E. Well, I'll just talk as I do it. So you're going to the highest note in position, returning back down, and then returning to the root. Let me do that one more time. So once you're comfortable with that, then we're going to be building some triads off of that pattern. Again, when I'm playing this, I'm going to be trying to hold the notes down to make it sustain the notes that are possible to, sustain. But some of them, like this one, that's pretty awkward, and I don't expect you to do that. Just play each individual note, be confident where it is located, and then you can move on. So that's E, G, C, C, E, G, E, G, C, and G, C, E. So, a dedicated full study to the linking up of scales and triads is a very large undertaking. It's something that jazz players spend years and years and years doing because they need to be comfortable improvising with these patterns. So it's a huge endeavor if you're doing it from like a fretboard theory perspective. But in this particular book, at least the first time you go through it, I would do it just with saying those note names aloud just to orient yourself to the various areas of the guitar. That's why I included it in the book. The fact that it has huge implications for music, fretboard theory and fretboard harmony is great, and it's an additional bonus, but it's not the intention, so don't get stressed about that. Don't worry if you don't understand the terminology. Just go at each individual exercise. And however you learn it is great. If you learn it just from ear and the video, that's okay. I'm not expecting you to read the notes even so much as to know what a C major scale sounds like and to learn it and to just memorize it. And then, though, by saying the note names out loud, you'll correct any gaps in the idea that you're just memorizing fingering, right? If you just memorize the fingerings and play it and just play the scale without saying the note names, you're just memorizing fingerings. It doesn't mean very much. But if you're saying those note names out loud, you'll actually know what note you're playing, And you'll be gaining fretboard orientation, but you'll also be gaining a whole bunch of awareness of how those two elements sync up to create each other, and very useful for later on.